can always not post it if we...
On, off, on, off. Okay. So, crap, because I was going to say something profound, and now I just forgot what it was. Well, here we are back. It's been 3 weeks since we've done this.
At least.
We didn't do the 2 weeks, like the week we were going to Shasta, and we didn't do last week while we're in Shasta.
Right. So
we
took 2 weeks off.
Yeah. Well, we didn't really take a couple weeks off. We just didn't.
We took 2 weeks off recording.
That's right. There's so much from those 2 weeks that maybe you just want to go out there and tap into it because anytime we're in Shasta, it is quite a profound shift for everybody. So I understand. I've been hearing from a lot of people. So where to start today, because we have so much. There is, after all we've talked about, there's been so much. I just don't even know where to start. But the place that I think is a good place to start is that alignment thing.
Right. And I think, like you and I've discovered, that the simpler the better. Yes. It's almost like back to basics instead of getting into, this and this, and with grace and ease and no. It's just like the simple alignment brings all that.
Yes. And so the simple alignment that we're talking about is simply doing a creation statement of, I am in full alignment and centered. Right. You can say, I think I put in mine, it was like, I am in alignment and centered in peace and love, or something like that. I think that's all I've done. I was guided to do that with a client last week, and then I had that conversation like 3 times in 24 hours, and I was like, oh, well, that would work because that makes a lot of sense. And because we have so much shifting going on, like this particular client sort of having a dark night of the soul, definitely having a dark night of the soul, but energetically, and talking about all the things that this client felt was going wrong, I would say that it was like her energy was all over the place, right? Like a scatter, like a cubist painting, right? And so my guidance in talking, because like I would ask while this client was talking, and I was like, so where do we start? And I just heard start in simple alignment and being aligned and centered. Again, it goes back to being the calm in the storm, right? Because there's a whole lot of chaotic things going on in the 3D as things are really shifting right now. We had some phenomenal experiences in Mount Shasta last week that just showed so much change. And that's where what everybody keeps on asking is, well, where do we even start, going from here? And it's like, well, that alignment and centeredness is really important.
Well, and if I know one of the things that I've worked into that alignment is alignment within the multiverse instead of just the 3D.
Right.
Which expands out that simple alignment.
Right. But if we just say alignment, wouldn't that incorporate everything?
unless you have an understood limited belief.
Oh,
I don't know.
That's true. That is true. So the other thing that I want to bring up for the purpose of those who watch this is the theme that we really focused on was resolving and completing fears.
Right.
Because there's so many layers of how we are motivated based on fear that we're not even conscious of them. So what we had set, just for anybody's information who wants to tap into that, if you want to consciously know what that was about, I think that's what we said as our creation was, complete, resolve, and embrace all my fears as part of, the bigger picture and love and blah, 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 or something like that. Right? That was not.
Yeah, that sounds close enough.
Yeah. And for us to have held that vibration, ourselves with that vibration in Mount Shasta for that period of time, it was a lot that came up and just flew right out, which is great.
Well, and a lot of past life stuff kept coming up.
A lot of past life stuff, because like many don't realize that many of the limitations and beliefs and fears that we hold come from things that have happened in other lifetimes. So it was interesting because somebody even asked there, because why are all these lifetime things coming up? I'm like, well, that's probably because it's the core of where the fear started. So
Right.
that's where we resolve it. So yeah, and
well, and if there is no time, it's all happening simultaneously anyway.
Right. And I was going to say, and that's the very tactical level of this. But part of it was the understanding that it's important for us at this point to resolve all that fear, because it's what holds us back in every respect.
It keeps us cycling through the
and for us to evolve into what it is we have chosen to do, then it's important to do so with freedom and allowance. So, and that means no fear. So, and a lot of trust.
Right.
So there is that, of course, and everything that's come up since then. I've like, it's funny, is I didn't really focus on that since we've returned or moved forward, but thinking about everything that's come up is all about it's still all about those fears, coming into resolution. So
right.
Yeah, I don't even know where to start. Do you have, like, beyond that, anything else you want to talk about today?
Well, I mean, the equinox happened over the weekend. And I think it's just that cyclical reminder we've put in place to create that balance. And I think that comes from that alignment.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And this is actually.
And I know that, we've talked before about the roles and I feel like that all comes into play because the roles keep us out of alignment.
Yes, they do.
And out of balance. And, just personally, you become almost unaware of it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because we justify our identity with roles, right? And I know we talk about a lot in Shasta too. So, and whether it's, God, I don't even remember what we talked about. It was like whether it's mother or father or sister or child or parent or a friend or
codependent or subordinate or superior or
a light worker or, all that. And we've talked about that in other episodes of this, but it's just really important for us to, and a lot of times where do the fears come from? Oh, well, if I don't live this role, then people are going to judge me and I'm going to feel bad about myself because then I'm not going to feel like I'm valuable,
Or who will I be?
Who will I be? That's the other one. Yeah.
Who will I be? Will I, that opens all the doors to possibilities, especially if you feel like you've are so vested in being the good person.
Yeah.
It's like, who will I be if I don't, if I give up that role, then, oh my God, I might not be seen as the good person.
Yep. And here's the funny thing. I just put this together. So apparently what's going on is because we get so bound up. Well, this is really big. Okay. We get so bound up in the roles, right? What we believe is our role, what the ego identifies with as our role, right? That if guidance comes in, that it's otherwise, what's going on right now, like what we were texting about yesterday, right? And I just thought of that, and like 3 other people, I'm like, wait a second, I see a pattern. How did I not see this pattern before? Which the suspicion that I've had about all of them has been, that their guidance is actually saying, no, this is not your role. This is not what you came here to do. This is what makes you feel good, because your ego is telling you this is what you're supposed to be doing because it makes other people value you a lot. Meaning that the ego doesn't feel like it's already valuable as it is, right?
Right.
And so you can't change this. This is what you're here to do. This is what we're here to do. Like, and
right. Well, this is your passion.
Right. This is my passion, which, by the way, is another tricky thing with the ego, because the ego can say, oh no, this is our passion. And the next question, oh, we did talk about this in Shasta too, is going to the next question beyond like these like brick, like sort of brick wall endings, right? When you get this answer, well, this is our passion. The next question to ask is, why is this our passion? Like, why is this my passion? Is it because it makes me feel really good about myself when I do it? Is it because, you know, when I do it, other people appreciate it so much that, you know, it makes me feel valuable? That's unfortunately where a lot of people who call themselves light workers sort of fall into, right? And say, oh, I just want to serve humanity. I just want to serve, you know, the world and all that kind of stuff. That's my passion. And then you're like, but if you ask why, they look at you like you have two heads. I mean, what do you mean why?
Right.
What do you mean why? Because that's what I'm supposed to do. But that's really not. And I've been there too. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so what happens is right now we're going through what I'm hearing is a course corrections.
Yeah.
So what has sort of worked and the ego has like really skirted very masterfully around through is, you know, it's time to, the higher self is saying, no, really, this over here is really what we're here to do. And the ego goes, no, this is what I'm doing. And then the higher self says, no, this is really the passion. So here's the difference. An ego-based passion is something that makes you feel good about yourself because of the outside factors, the externalizations of it, meaning other people like look up to you, other people like think you're a great person, other people call you an angel, other people, a savior, right? Other people do that, so it makes you feel good about yourself.
One of the things that I've always tried to remember when I'm identifying things that, you know, what is my passion and why am I here, is what flows.
Yes.
Because if it's hard and it's a struggle and that makes the reward even better.
That's ego-based. Yeah.
That can't be, and here I go using an absolute. That's an indication that that's ego-based. It's not, it's because your passion and your purpose should just be second nature. It should just flow, and the success should flow equally as easy in return.
Right. And people, many times they stop short of that because they're like, oh, well, that's just something I love to do. Well, that's really what you should be doing. Like, I don't need to make, and then like the ego says, oh, I don't need to make money doing that. I'm just doing it. And it's like, but wouldn't it be even better if you made money doing that too? Because
then that's all you'd have to do.
Exactly. You know, and,
right.
And, you know, and this is the course correction that's going on. The more people, not people, it's not just people, it's all around the multiverse is my understanding. The more we continue down this path of egocentric passion categorizations, right? The more sort of catastrophic and hard and suffering based it's going to become, because it's the higher self making that course correction, forcing the course correction because of being strong-willed and obstinate about it. So I can tell people, like, my personal experience to this, because this is how it all came into me when we were texting about it yesterday, was the remembrance of when I was guided to even get into to this work, right? Because I had been doing, you know, I had done professional marketing communications in a corporate setting for 17 years. I had left to create my herb nursery. And then that sort of fell through. That did fall through. And then I created a small consulting-based business marketing and communications business for small, medium businesses. And I really liked it. Like, I really liked it. I really liked working with, and because what did I end up doing was really a precursor to this, but my mind couldn't wrap itself around it. So I was ending up working with small and medium-sized business owners of, like, I focused on a lot of green and wellness companies, where I helped the owners find and remember their passion for why they started the business to begin with.
Right.
And we would do, like, the business plan and how to get visible and how to really establish it. That, and I really like that. Right. So then what does the ego say? Oh, well, this is really what we're here to do.
This is it.
This is it. And then during that period, I was going through the humming that started off the big grand awakening. And then, so a couple of years into it, I have this booming business. I have part-time help because it's going really well and good money coming in. And I'm getting, nope, that's not what you came here to do. And I kept on saying, yeah, it was like, basically came here to do this. And I was like, yeah, no, I can do that on the side. This is it. I can do that on the side, but this is my business. This is my, I really love this. And then I kept on getting no.
And what's funny is for some reason the word ego trip just came to mind, and I never used to think of it in terms of it's a place where your ego takes you, like a vacation, a trip.
Really. Right? And it was going on. So, and the thing was, what happened was so surreal, I can barely explain it today. The longer I continued to insist on staying on that path, because A, it was comfortable, really, because I've been doing it for so long and I was good at it, right? B, part of it was stuff that really lit my fire, but not the other stuff, right? So then the ego says, well, that's enough, right?
Right.
So
I can settle for that.
Right. So the longer I'm doing that, these bizarre things started happening where, like, I would hit a brick wall and a brick wall and a brick wall, and I'd be in the middle of a project. I'd work on somebody's website for 6 hours, be done with it, and the website would literally just disappear. I'd have to start all over again. So my projects became this really it was just unbearably long, and it would break down like one step at a time until I literally felt like I had these vices around me and I could not do anything anymore. And I found myself withdrawing more because I was like, what's going on? I feel like a failure, right? Because all this stuff is sort of imploding on me. And I finally just got it. Yeah, because this is what we're here to do.
Right.
And that was when I finally called Uncle, and I remember writing I was guided to write this very heartfelt, honest letter to my clients on Facebook to let them know what had been going on with me, and, with my apologies and blah, 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 and I'll finish up my projects and then I'm moving on. And I gave a deadline as to when I was going to stop. And literally that was, starting from scratch. Now, was it scary? Absolutely. Because I moved into a field that I had never worked in, never intended to work in, never thought you could make a living doing, right? So anybody who watches this who has been guided to do this kind of work, you can make a living doing it. It's like any other business, right? But we think these other things in our minds, these are beliefs that we hold. Well, then you're afraid of what people are going to think of you, if they're going to judge you, if they're going to think you're, a whack job, if, right. There's just so many, right? And basically, I remember telling my husband, I'm like, okay, well, I'm changing directions again because, I left corporate and all that. And I said, but this is really what I'm being pushed to do. And I was like, give me I think it took about 6 to 9 months to really get income going, but it really flowed once I surrendered to it and allowed it to be who I am. And it continues to evolve. So the thing is too, that I'm doing this and I've been doing this kind of work, but as I've gone along, I've had to get continuous course corrections from the higher self to say, okay, you don't need to do that.
Yeah. Now tweak this, now tweak this.
And that's a continuous thing. So that's where we surrender and trust to our higher self to say, okay. And what I would say the passion, and here's the thing, what I love to do, like what I'm like this year is sort of shaking out to be are things that I love to do so much that it's not work to me, like at all. Like
Right.
I could do it 24/7, 365, and it's not work. It's play. And I've said that for years now about what I do is like, I love every day of what I do. And it's not because of an externalization. It's because I feel like I'm able to be truly me when I've never been able to be truly me before. Even though I didn't even have a conscious awareness of who I was, like, because I had been taught all these things to not be, and, you know,
Right.
and what I'm supposed to be and everything else. But the more I did this, the more I was like sort of able to like relax into myself. Like, and the first place that I really felt that in a really big way was Mount Shasta. The first time I went, remember the first time I went there, because everything gets stripped away. And I literally sat down. I remember the place I was staying. I got there and I looked at the mountain and I sat down and I sobbed because I felt like, oh yeah, no, I'm home. And
Here
this,
it is.
here's me. Like here's me in this really pure way that I hadn't even realized I'd been depriving myself of. So that's the whole, this is a journey. It's not just a every day, but the point that the thing that just came to me was, oh, I just realized that there are a number of people that I've been talking to where they're having this dark night of the soul, where everything is sort of falling down no matter what they try. And the more they try to stay on the same path, the more they seem to be getting, you know, like injured or sick or like, you know, cash deprived or
financially stopped.
Yeah. And people come to me and they're like, well, what do I do? And what was I guided? Oh, just stick with, like, I am aligned and I'm centered. When we're aligned and we're centered, that goes back to being able to hear the higher self, right?
Everything just flows.
Yeah. And everything just flows. And that's surrendering and trusting that we know what we're doing and that the universe is, the multiverse is gonna support us when we allow. So the non-ego based passion would be something that you find purely a way for you to embody your divine bliss, right?
Right. And it's fulfilled on all fronts, not just, oh, well, that makes me feel good about myself. Well, not only does it make you feel good about yourself, but you can support yourself. You can create balance in your life. It's not there's no downside to it.
Right.
It's not a trade-off.
Right. And that's where the mind tries to think there is, right? The mind tries to say, no, I can't make money doing this because it's too easy, right?
Right.
I can't make money doing this because how could I get paid for having fun?
Right.
How fun was Mount Shasta?
Exactly.
But, you know, we stop ourselves and everybody goes, oh, well, you're special, or, you know, that's how it rolls for you. It doesn't work. And it's like, but how many have really tried allowing this, right? And I always hear, but I'm single, but I'm a single parent, but there's like the buts, which are all ego, right? Excuses, rationalizations to say, but I don't know how I would live. I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what if you just trusted and allowed the multiverse to support you in remembering and embodying that bliss in a way that you don't have to ever worry about anything again.
Right.
So I will say that anybody going through that dark night of the soul and having everything implode around you, even though like your ego might be telling you, no, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. So obviously I have to suffer to get through this or whatever to succeed. Maybe you want to step back. Set yourself to be in alignment in the, you know, throughout the multiverse, throughout the multi-dimensional you, the whole holographic you, right?
Right.
I'm in full alignment. It just feels good to say it.
Well, in all aspects.
Yeah.
Not just, it's like everything just comes into focus. All the pieces and parts just all line up, and the clarity and the sharpness and the simplicity of it all just comes into focus. That's the best way I can describe what I'm seeing.
Well, and you know what's interesting? What just hit me when you said that about the focus. That's really funny. Was a very simple, quick conversation I was having with my husband yesterday, because we were in the car. And so his background was his eyes were really bad, right? So he had like really Coke bottle glasses and everything else until he had the corrective surgery 15 years ago. So I've always had 20/20 vision, and I think I probably would still register. I think I still register as 20/20 vision. But in the past year, I've just noticed that small print in a like a dimmer setting, sometimes things are blurry and it takes me a minute to be able to focus in on them, right? So I had fought the getting readers and blah, blah, blah. So I just got like +1 readers, which is like the lowest level you can get, which is basically wearing a tiny little magnifying glass to look at them. And I only use them in one of those situations because I find that I can actually read everything fine. Like I look around me, I can read everything fine. And I realized this in the conversation with my husband yesterday, because I had a pair in my purse and we were in the car, and he took them out and he put them on and he was looking at like my phone or whatever. And he goes, I don't see the difference. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, it's just a little magnified. And I said, right, but that makes all the difference for me. And I was quiet for a minute and I said, but I guess because my entire life, funny to like hear myself say this, my entire life I've had this 20/20 really sharp vision that anything even a little bit off focus feels uncomfortable.
Right.
So just that little +1 helps everything just focus in, and it feels crystal clear and sharp and crisp to me again. And he just starts laughing. He goes, I guess for me it's, well, I can see it. So
that's good enough.
That's good enough, right? So how many of us do that though? I didn't even really think, like when you were saying focus, that came to mind, that little conversation. And I'm like,
well, and just scraping by is good enough.
Right.
And just struggling for this is just good enough. And being happy sometimes is just good enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And getting a lot of what you want is good enough, not all of what you want.
Or being content is good enough.
Right.
Yeah. And that's like saying, well, okay, well, things are a little blurry, but I can still read them. That's good enough.
Right.
But what if we said that about our messages? What if it comes in blurry, but it's not that clear, but it's good enough, right?
It's something.
It's something, right? But then
which a lot of people are just happy to get that.
That is true. But then I guess because I've been doing that for a long time, I'm like, oh, well, that would make a lot of sense, right? Because I've been doing this for a long time, that when I feel like something is not right on or clear or simple and clear, then I'm like, okay, so really what am I missing? Right. That's a lot. Wow. That just burst into a big, huge thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to put this on pause because I'm going to take a little bio break.
Yes.
So people would ask, well, how can I tell? And I'm like, well, first of all, if everything's imploding on you, that's a good sign.
Attention. Danger, Will Robinson.
Because we can be so stubborn. I can't even tell you how many things I've talked about when we were in Shasta that I'm like, I even know, and I'm so conscious and like promise my higher self I'm going to listen. And there are still times the ego's like, nah, and I still have to give myself the message like several times.
Well, and a lot of times we convince ourselves, well, no, I just have to be in acceptance and I have to not fight and and it's like, that's giving up your power.
Well, but if you're truly in acceptance, you're going to listen to that guidance over fight what the guidance is that you're, like saying, no, because this is better. This feels better to me, to the ego, right? So that's another really fine line, right? Because if you're in acceptance of the guidance, you're like, well, I'm going to do this. Why are you doing this? Because I'm guided. Well, blah, 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 blah. It might not be this, blah, blah. It was like the whole getting ready to go to Shasta, right? And they had the smoke and the fires, right? And everything else. And I had some people like sort of panic. And And basically I'm like, my guidance was to go this week. I'm sure it'll be perfect.
Right.
And what happened? We got in, it was smoky that first night. And yeah, we saw haze over the period of time we were there, but not in a way that was detrimental. And it was beautiful. The weather was perfect the whole time.
Yep.
And even people in town were saying, "Oh God, this is great because we've had this crappy like summer with like all this smoke." But the thing was, guidance was go these dates this week, you know, set the retreat up for that. And so no matter what, even if we had smoke, I would have still said it was perfect. Because
it was absolutely perfect.
So, but the thing is, when we truly do accept and allow, it does flow. Really, right?
Right.
But I mean, you're saying like acceptance in terms of like accepting and surrendering to all this,
the status quo,
right?
And just enough.
Yeah, just enough and
just
comfort.
enough.
And the thing is, when we use the word comfort, was really funny is because the comfort is an ego word. I always tell people the worst thing. Here's the funny thing is I've said this all along. When people come in to see me and I'm like, and they'll say they're content or comfortable. I'm like, yeah, that is actually a far more dangerous place to be than to be completely miserable.
Right.
Because the ego is motivated to change when you have a whole bunch of stuff imploding on you versus when you're comfortable or content.
Yeah, I've always heard the phrase that, you know, the discomfort of change has to outweigh the discomfort of not changing. Right. And when you're comfortable, there's no impetus to change.
Right.
Because you're lulled into this place of good enough.
Right. And so the thing I would say is if you see things imploding around you and within you, you know, the next question people will say, well, how do I hear? How do I understand? I would say what I'm getting to say is look at what you've said no to in the past year. Look at the things that you have said no to when they've come up, especially if there's a repetition about it.
Right.
God, who was I talking to about that this weekend? I was just talking to somebody about that.
Was it your kids?
No, maybe I dreamt it. It's so clear in my mind, though. I can't remember who I was saying it to. Because I was saying, they were talking about how something had come up.
I don't think it was me.
No, I don't think it was you. This is so weird. I feel so, discombobulated right this moment. It was I was talking to somebody who was saying how, you know, they've been focusing on this one something, but this other thing has come up like 3 times and they've said no.
Yeah.
They said no, or they've ignored it. And I'm like, well, being that it's come up 3 times, wouldn't you want to look at it?
Right.
To me, when it comes up 3 times, it's my higher self like poking at me going, hello, 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 look at that.
Attention.
And if it's something you know, the ego says, oh, that's uncomfortable, I don't feel good with that or whatever. It's like, well, but there's something to look at or else it wouldn't be coming back to you again and again.
Right.
So that's what I'm talking about when you look at what you've said no to this past year, especially if there's a pattern to it or repetition to it, because that's your higher self guiding you to look in another direction where the ego is saying, no, tunnel vision this way. Right. And really it goes back to allowing yourself this full holographic, multidimensional, multiversal alignment.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big circle back to the beginning.
Right.
But that's important because I do hear that a lot from people right now, like, and seeing like this whole like, oh no, I must do this, I must proceed, and you know, if I have to suffer, so be it. And it's like
at all costs.
At all costs, right?
Right.
So allow and align. and center. So food for thought. All right, now we're just going right back to the alignment and centering, right? That's what we're going to do.
Absolutely.
All right, the whole multiversal holographic self and collective, I would say.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, let's go.
I think I could have just stayed there.
Mm-hmm. I know, I kept on getting the nudge to come back, and I'm like, oh, just a moment longer. Just a couple of moments longer.
Oh, yeah.
That felt really nice. Mm. And I was seeing all these different things that I couldn't even tell you because it was like one string connected to another, because it was like doing all this, doing all this. No, what if you did this and pulled one thing out, right, and everything else fell away? And then it was like, and then it was like it rolled into something else, and it was just like one thing into another, and then finally it was just this whole like shift into alignment. Like it was like the back cracking, you know.
Right. I kept feeling like, you know how when a wave kind of hits you and it's more powerful or forceful than you expect, and you kind of lose your orientation and you're kind of floundering and flailing and trying to upright yourself and, you know, or reorient yourself. That's what I kept feeling like. And it was just like all the things that it was almost like this is an effort to stay out of alignment.
Yes.
That it's actually more natural to be in alignment, and that the disorientation comes from you artificially imposing something that is against the natural alignment. And it takes that concentration and focus, and just letting go of that was initially so disorienting, and then, but yet so easy.
Yes. Yeah, because once you do it, you're like, what? This is...
Yeah, why was I doing anything but this?
Right. Nice. Oh, that was very peaceful too.
Yeah, that was nice.
All right, well, that's one for everyone to work on this week, or if not work on, focus on this week. And experience and allow and say, you know, if I were to, oh, by the way, the person who I had that conversation with stepped up in the meditation, and she was like, it was me. And I was like, oh, that's right. It was one of my clients.
Oh, there you go.
Because it was a situation where she's really building a career in her passion. And so then what happens, it's actually a perfect example for me to see it once I was remembered the whole conversation. It was because she really is building a career in her passion. And the funny thing is, so in her mind, then the ego says, well, we have to do this, this, and this. Like, this is the way for us to do what we really want to do, right? So there's been a job that's connected totally in what she's doing, right? That will provide her some other experience, but it's now 3 times been presented to her to take the job. And 2 times, once was before we started working together. The second time was when we were working together, and it's been presented a 3rd time. And I'm like, so, and she's like, well, you know, this has come up, and you know, and I'm just thinking, no, because this and this. I'm like, okay, but why? And it really turned out that the reason she didn't want it because she felt like, as a single mom, part of it was as a single mom, she felt like it would take the flexibility away from her being with her small kids.
Right.
I said, well, this is the point where their dad has to step up and be more of a parent.
Right.
You're not together. So it was interesting because we had talked about that, and I said, but if it's come back to you the same exact position 3 times now, and you've been approached 3 different times, you know, that's something to look at.
Right.
Maybe a reason for you to think about trying it out, even if it's for a year.
Oh, yeah.
I said, I'm sure it has something to provide for you that you can't see, or else you wouldn't need it.
Right.
So yeah, and that was a perfect example of like these kind of things to look at. So
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And we know we are ramping up again because Lest you think we're done because of Mount Shasta, there's also Peru coming in 2 weeks. So
That's right.
so that will be another phenomenal shift. Or it isn't, it's just a continuous shift. So stay in alignment, stay centered, and we'll talk to you next week. Have a good one.
Bye.